Hi, I'm Seth Leon of the Alberta Community and Cooperative Association.
And I'm Derek Leahy of Rural Roots to Climate Solutions. I host the ComGen Lunch with Seth.
ComGen Network is made up of community groups, co-ops, installers, municipalities, and individuals in Alberta who are interested in creating clean energy projects that generate electricity and community benefits.
The ComGen Lunch is the online call our network has every second Friday to discuss community renewable energy projects at different stages of development. Some projects are just an idea still, and others have been completed already.
In ComGen Lunch number 5, Jodi Conuel of the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley, located in Canmore, Alberta, tells the story of the Bow Valley Green Energy Cooperative, which is a brand new co-op working on bringing community-owned renewable energy projects to the Bow Valley.
Bow Valley Green Energy's approach is to install solar panels on existing buildings throughout Canmore and the Bow Valley and sell that energy back to the building's owners. If the panels produce more energy than the building needs, that energy is sold back into the grid and the building owner gets to pocket the cash.
The biggest takeaway for me was that community renewable energy doesn't always have to be small-scale generation or a solar farm. It can also be microgeneration at a smaller scale. You'll see what I mean when you watch the video. Enjoy.
All good. So first of all, hi everyone. My name is Jodi. I work for the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley, and I'm also here in the capacity as a board member for Bow Valley Green Energy. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing over the last sort of year, our incorporation process, our strategies moving forward, because they're potentially quite different to what everyone else is looking at working on right now. And before I get started, I'd just like to thank ACCA and Rural Roots to Climate Solutions again for organizing this and for inviting me to speak today. We love having the opportunity to spread our message and to provide others with sort of some insight on how we're getting on and how we're working. So what is Bow Valley Green Energy Cooperative? We are a newly incorporated cooperative under the Alberta Cooperatives Act, which is super exciting. We incorporated about 4 to 6 weeks ago. We're a community-owned social enterprise, and our vision is to make renewable energy affordable and accessible here specifically in the Bow Valley, but worldwide soon to come. Our mission, we really want to empower our local community to reduce its environmental impacts, and we want to help them do that. We want to provide a vehicle for the community to lead the transition to sustainable futures, and we want to utilize our capacity to pool human and financial resources to foster this development. And we believe that we're slowly working along the path to helping those things come to fruition. So a little bit about where we came from. So back in 2019, January 2019, the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley undertook a feasibility study into community generation, specifically targeting the Bow Valley, with the concept that we wanted to put solar on every single rooftop. We were able to do this with generous funding from Energy Efficiency Alberta through their Community Generation Capacity Building Grant. So part of the feasibility study was kind of looking at two different routes to success. We were looking at the technical feasibility of community generation in the Bow Valley, specifically utilizing already built roof space on which to install solar panels. But we also looked at what are the options for funding these kind of projects. How do we utilize our community to the best of its advantage, both financially and location-based for a project. As a result of the study, we created a steering committee of really engaged volunteers who were really interested in what we were trying to do and had the expertise to help push it forward. And from the steering committee, Bow Valley Green Energy was kind of born. And as I mentioned, we're now officially incorporated and an entity in our own right, which is really exciting. A couple of things we found during the feasibility study is that we had so much community interest interest based on what we were trying to do. In the matter of 2 weeks, we had over 150 people sign up to potentially rent out their rooftop to a solar panel installation, which is really exciting. We had 9 different businesses, and we also identified a few locations outside of the valley. So just to clarify, the concept was that we wanted people to rent out their roof space and we would install solar panels onto their roof space. So the interest was phenomenal. In the same period of time, we had over 100 people sign up to say that they would be interested in potentially investing as well. And that was really without any formal advertising. It was just kind of like a question at the end of a conversation, which is really exciting. So I'm keen to see where we can go when we actually start formally recruiting for members and investors. So what are we actually doing? Well, as I mentioned, we want to make renewable energy affordable and accessible. The reason for this is because renewable energy solutions, be it solar, wind, geothermal, etc., they're not generally affordable to many individuals, nor are they available to everyone. As I mentioned, some people can't actually afford the initial capital investment. I, for one, would love to have solar panels on my roof, but I just physically can't find the finances to do it at this time. And the other aspect is that some people live in condominiums or apartments, or your building is not actually structurally suitable for solar. You might have lots of dormer windows, or your roof might be angled the wrong way. That's definitely one thing we found here in the Bow Valley, is that a lot of rooftops are angled for the view, not for the solar collection capacity. So that was really interesting. Loads of people, as I mentioned, have identified a wish to participate in these kind of projects, and we are really just trying to provide the vehicle in which that they can do so. And hopefully by creating these opportunities and installing these community-owned renewable energy projects, we can build momentum for this kind of work going into the future. So our progress to date, it's actually quite amazing what we've achieved in a short space of time. It's one of the things that we were reflecting on this morning, that we feel incredibly privileged to be able to share this success story with everyone today. So as I mentioned, back in 2019, in early January, we, as the Biosphere Institute, conceptualized the idea of solar on every rooftop. We applied for the Community Generation Capacity Building Grant, and as I mentioned, we were successful. So we started a process of outreach into the community, looking for interested, willing and capable volunteers. In May, we began working with the Alberta Community and Cooperatives Association, and from all of their training and guidance, we created our volunteer steering committee. In November of 2019, we officially named ourselves Bow Valley Green Energy Cooperative. And then coming into 2020, we finished our feasibility study and we presented our results to the community, as well as introducing the community officially for the first time to Bow Valley Green Energy. In other news, in February 2020, the Biosphere Institute, because Bow Valley Green Energy was not an official entity yet, applied on their behalf to the Investment Readiness Program, the federal program that was recently closed. And we were again successful in our application to that program, which was amazing. And from there, we have the capacity to continue building on the work of the feasibility study. And then in May 2020, we officially became incorporated and officially formalized our board, which is, again, very exciting. So for the incorporation process, we actually worked with Elliot Bridgewater, an associate and colleague of Seth Leon here. And there was a little bit of a process to this that took a lot longer than we necessarily anticipated, but that's okay. These things take time. So we began by approaching our steering committee and saying, hey, is this really what you want to do? You know, signing up to this is making it almost official. And so we confirmed our boards of directors, and we decided that an opportunity development cooperative was the right way to go for us. We had to undertake a nuance search to make sure that nobody already had our name, and we were lucky that they didn't. And then we drafted our incorporation, our articles of incorporation, and filed them under the Cooperatives Act. I must mention that COVID definitely helped slow things down here for us, having to do things socially distant when usually you would all get into a room together and talk these things out and sign on the dotted line. We weren't able to follow that process as normal, and you know, maybe this is the start of the new normal for us. So we're still in the process of finalizing our bylaws. We have got a draft version 3 together, so hopefully we're getting somewhere with making our final decisions, but we have until October 2020 to do that, because you have 180 days after you officially incorporate to file your final bylaws. And then at some point in the next year, we'll hold an AGM with our members, and hopefully by then we'll have a few more than just the 7 board members that we currently have today. So that's a little bit about what we've been doing. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how what we're doing is slightly different, perhaps, to what other people on this call are doing. I'm going to assume that most people on this call understand that there are 2 different ways to interconnect into the electricity grid, one of which is microgeneration and one of which is small-scale electricity generation. If anyone really wants me to go into more detail on this, I'm happy to, and I can do so in the Q&A, because unfortunately I can't see if anyone's raising their hand right now. So please don't hesitate to ask the question once you get to the Q&A. But the reason I bring this up is because we, as Bow Valley Green Energy, are looking at a business model which focuses on utilizing microgeneration, not small scale generation. And I appreciate that this isn't officially community generation in as far as the legislation says it's not community generation, but for us, it is community generation because we're leveraging community funds in order to install renewable energy systems. And by looking at the microgeneration regulations in this way and figuring out how we can fit into this niche space, hopefully we're creating a viable business plan that is a little easier to accomplish than $1 million project. We're looking at $45,000 or $250,000 versus $1 million, and those are very different scales of operation. So this is our very high level business plan, because as I mentioned, we're still working out all of the kinks and everything that we need to do to move forward. But this is kind of the objective for the next couple of years, is to figure out how we can use member investment shares, be that dividends or bonds, and also accessing loans or potentially sponsorships or grants as a financing vehicle to install a system on a property under the microgeneration regulation. So in this theoretical model, we would be placing solar panels onto a property, and we would be signing a power purchase agreement with the building owner. So the building owner will purchase power from our panels for a set price for a set period of time. We will own the panels. We will be responsible for the maintenance, the installation, any damage that may or may not occur because of the panels. And they will get a long-term stable power price. We're also looking at the opportunities of sort of green incentive tax credits and so on and so forth. but we're still researching that to figure out how we can amalgamate those kind of things going forward. And to be clear, the host would still be connected to the grid. So they would still need to have a contract with the grid for the times when the sun isn't shining or it snows, for example. And the host is going to get the benefit of selling the excess electricity to the grid. We are just making our money through a power purchase agreement, potentially, as we have laid out in this business model. So a little bit more about what we're trying to do. As I say, we really want to enable renewable energy generation in Alberta in general. This for us goes beyond just the Bow Valley, and we're working a little bit on advocacy. It's a very small part of what we do, but we believe that it's important to help us achieve our goals. So back in 2019, I think it was around about October, the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley met with Miranda Rosen, our local MLA, to discuss our project idea with her and to tell her that there was a few things that were potentially standing in the way. Now, this was at the time we were looking at doing let's call it official community generation, where you're working to connect a project under the small scale generation regulations. And we went to her with a few ideas and told her what we were trying to do. And she was very excited about what we were trying to do. And she suggested that we reach out to the Red Tape Reduction Committee and tell them the issues that we were having in bringing our solar on every rooftop into fruition. Fast forward a few months, and very recently, Bow Valley Green Energy had another meeting with Miranda Rosen, our MLA, the Alberta Utility Commission, and the Minister Dale Nally, to talk to them in a little bit more detail about what they could do to cut red tape that might help our initiative. And one of the things that we decided to focus on in this case was the microgeneration regulations. The reason for this is the current microgeneration regulations limit the size of a renewable energy development to load capacity. So for example, if your building has an annual electricity consumption of 3,500 kilowatt hours, your rooftop solar system is limited to 4.5 kilowatts or less. So we asked them if it would be possible to just increase the production capacity permission on the microgeneration regulations to exceed annual consumption by 10 to 25%. We understand that that would be within the safety factor of a distribution system, and that could be a potential way for us as Bow Valley Green Energy to install slightly larger projects and help people make a little bit more money and make the project a little bit more interesting for our hosts. Recently, we also signed a letter of support that the Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative put to the federal government, which was asking them to use federal post-COVID-19 recovery stimulus to unlock community investment in green energy. And I'm sure that a lot of you have also had the email from Seth, where he's asking us to provide our input on how the government plans and prioritizes Alberta's infrastructure investments. The Bow Valley Green Energy is currently reviewing this, and we'll be putting in our 2 cents as to how we think that they can utilize that money in the renewable energy space as best possible. So what are our next steps? Well, I mentioned that we are currently having a lovely retreat, a socially distanced retreat, I should mention. And it's really the first step in our next steps. We have a long way to go, but we're really getting somewhere, and it's really exciting to be able to share our progress since the last presentation that I did on this project. So as I mentioned, we're really almost ready to submit our bylaws. I'd say maybe in the next 2 or 3 months, depending on how long the review process takes. with the IRP funding that we were incredibly grateful to receive, hopefully within the next year, we'll be able to have a project shovel ready. So basically all that is left to do is to sign the paperwork to say that we have a host, we have a supplier, and we have a power purchase agreement all lined up. We're also using the IRP funding to work on some business planning and financial modeling. And this is to take us beyond necessarily the microgeneration space and to look at the small scale generation space and see what opportunities we have further down the line. Obviously, if we want to secure funding and get this project built, we need to do a membership drive and create our investment share offering documents. Again, something that IRP funding is really going to help us with. And hopefully we'll be able to source the funds and install a renewable project within the next 18 months for electrification. And finally, one thing I really wanted to share with you is that we're keen to trailblaze this a little bit and work out the kinks, a lot of which we've been doing lately, trying to get a replicable business model that we're really interested in sharing with the community. We want to be able to hand over a binder of stuff and say, hey, this is what we did, now you do it, and this is how you do it, and here's all the paperwork that you need and all of the steps in the process. And that is sort of a long-term goal, both for the Biosphere Institute and for Bow Valley Green Energy. We want others to benefit from our hard work as we move forward. Okay, so that's kind of it for me, a little bit of an overview. I hope that we can have a really good discussion based around some of the things I've said.
I just want to say thank you for such an amazing presentation and really insightful on both the development as well as the strategies regarding the microgen, the advocacy, and I think it's also really exciting, like, that once, you know, kind of building that local capacity to then, like, when you're advocating to your MLAs, that it isn't just kind of a single issue, rather it's connecting it to the community and kind of changing that relationship between the decision maker and the co-op and being able to tell that story. So that's great to hear it, as well as the problem solving and how that's connected to your business model and the long-term viability. I'll ask a couple of questions, and then we could have people, if they want to put them in the chat box, or if they want to open their lines. I'm trying to what's the easiest way to direct traffic. But I guess in terms of the development process, like if there was a group that's getting started tomorrow, given that you've been at it for a year, what advice would you give?
Honestly, I would say don't rush into anything. I think there's a lot of learning to be done, even for people who work in this space. I think there's this kind of environment is adapting all of the time. So I would definitely say take your time, make sure you do your research, and reach out to people who've already done it. That's something that we found to be incredibly beneficial, is having this community generation community that you yourself, Seth, have really helped create. It's utilizing those resources. There's no need to replicate the wheel, so to speak.
No, that's really great. I guess talking about, like, back into the community and that there's supporters here, is there anything that you're working on that if you were to put out to a group, something, do you have any asks for whether it's feedback on something or a specific skill that the co-op is looking to build? I know there been mention of like some committee work and some different things, but is there anything that you want to put out to this community to help your co-op advance?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Seth. One thing that we're really struggling with is understanding the alternative financing mechanisms, such as things like TFSAs and RFSPs, and realizes there's resources out there that we could go to, but if anyone has any experience with dealing with those processes and people, that would be really amazing to have that connection, have a Zoom to talk about it.
And that actually might be something we can help you out with, Jodi. Not like I can barely count my fingers, so I don't have that expertise, but we do have access to some consultants that might be able to help out there. And also, even with that cookbook that you guys want to throw together, we really want to put together a great template or a framework for other communities, and especially in rural Alberta, to pursue something like this. So I think that's something we could definitely help you out with. And then any storytelling you need to do, we could definitely help you out there.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And like I said, our goal is to facilitate renewable energy. We are happy to share this. We're not in it for the money. We're not trying to do it for any other reason, and that we believe that we need more systems like this in place, and we're trying to figure out how to do it within the regulations that exist, and hopefully we've figured it out.
Great. Well, we have a question here. I'll just read it out. Curious about your process with your council. A bylaw was created to allow the project to fit. How did you go about that? You obviously had support of the council for the bylaw, but wondering if Canmore is looking at any kind of partnership.
Oh, sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. We didn't actually change any laws in order to facilitate what we're doing. We just made our model fit into the current laws, whilst we're trying to poke and prod in a few different places that we think we can facilitate change for the better. But as far as our relationship with the town, the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley has a great relationship with our local town. We often work in partnership with them to facilitate some of their more climate-based environmental goals. So we already have that rapport, we already have those conversations. But moving forward, Bow Valley Green Energy is certainly working to build on its relationship with the town. We did put in an application with the town to the MCCAC grant. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that, but our project just wasn't further enough along down the line for them to warrant that. So we're talking about potential location options. Also, as you can imagine, most of the bigger buildings here in town do belong to the municipality, but they want to put their own solar installations on those buildings, and they are in the process of doing that. So it's a little limited, but we're trying to work together and facilitate a good relationship, so that if something becomes available, we can work together to do it in the best way possible.
Got to be the only place in the prairies where like the people are in competition with the municipality to put up solar panels on buildings. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yes, it's not a bad problem to have, but so I'm going to be completely upfront and honest with you. I am not the financial person in our committee. I am the person that likes to come and talk to everyone. So my understanding of how the money works is on a need to know basis, but I'll try and explain a little bit from my understanding. So the idea is that we will look at a potential host electricity bill and find out what tariff they're on. That's usually like a really good place to start. We've actually identified a few places in town where they're paying way too much for their electricity. So signing on to a PPA with us would be really beneficial to them, because we can offer them a really low price. There's also opportunities in town that we're not able to pursue because the opposite is true. Like someone like a really high energy user might have a really low tariff, and in which case it's not actually beneficial for them to sign on with us beyond the green initiatives that they might want to sign their name to. So we would be working it out on a project by project or host by host basis. So we don't actually have a finalized project that I can share with you any figures. I can only work in the theoretical space right now until we actually get something signed. But the idea is that we would garner community investment to install the solar panels. We would broker a deal with the host that would be specific to that host based on how much they're already paying, how much they'd be willing to pay, to try and create a nice middle ground. And then we'd be working on holding money for a certain period of time from our investors. So we don't anticipate paying a dividend in year one. We anticipate paying a dividend later down the line. but again, I can't I can't really give you any definite examples. As far as administration costs go, we've kind of worked it in that we're going to take a portion of the profits from each solar installation and reinvest it into the co-op just to pay our background costs. But for now, we've been incredibly lucky in our relationship with the Biosphere Institute that they have been able to leverage grant funding in order to facilitate the creation and the ongoing work that the Bow Valley Green Energy is doing. We do have an entirely volunteer base, but paying for room rental and paying a lawyer and all of that kind of stuff is actually been facilitated by grant funding pretty much all the way through. So we've been incredibly lucky.
So, yeah, Jodi, that was actually one of my questions. How many people are working on the project? Is it just you and a handful of volunteers?
We currently have 7 people. I am, as a staff member of the Biosphere Institute, being paid to facilitate and continue to move things along. But I can't tell you how overwhelmed I am that we're so lucky that I have this amazing group of volunteers who are dedicated to the cause. And we live in Canmore. There's people with a lot of time. You know, they're dedicated. They have the knowledge and the willingness to do it. And again, we're just super lucky to have found a really great team of people. And it took a while. I'd say it took about 6 months for people coming in, going out, before we really nailed down our what is now our core board group. And we're just about to start reaching out into the community again. So our board has, as I mentioned, formalized, and we've kind of allocated ourselves into various committees. So the communications and promotions committee, we have a financing committee, so on and so forth. And a board member is the chair of each of those. And we're going to start reaching out into the community to find out if there's anyone else who wants to come and join a particular thing rather than dedicating to everything and just saying, oh, I'm interested in marketing, so I'd like to join that committee, or so on and so forth. So hopefully we get a little more volunteers.
Yeah, I find that's really maybe just like a bit of a comment or to see it, but you know, jumping off like that first part of like the community engagement, and when you went out to the community, people were interested in volunteering the roofs or getting involved. But now that you're able to kind of like give people tasks, and if it's things that they're interested in, has that, I guess, looking at like kind of herding all the cats or being like the supporter for the volunteer management, how has that experience been in terms of just managing the people, managing the volunteers to advance the co-op?
I'll be honest, it's a little bit of a full-time job on top of my full-time job. I definitely dedicate volunteer hours above and beyond what I'm officially being paid to do in order to facilitate this. But again, I think it just comes down to the fact that we're all super passionate about it, and I'm willing to give that time because I believe in what we're doing.
That's amazing. No, that's really incredible. Yeah, are there any other questions or any other thoughts that people want to ask, or how can people learn more or get involved or share what you're doing?
So we actually have a relatively new website. It's bvgreenenergy.org, and we're working on creating a Facebook group actually, which I wanted to talk to you guys about. We'd really like to have an opportunity online to have these kind of conversations on a little bit more of an ad hoc basis. Creating a space that we can ask random questions. Does anyone know anything about this? And so on and so forth. So just generally sharing stories about renewable energy development and all that kind of stuff. So if people are happy, I'll share that with you, Seth, once it's up and running, and we can hopefully facilitate that as well.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And I think there's so much knowledge and skills and people figuring it out as they go that it's like the answers are here in the community. I think as well, like that kind of localizing it is really having to look at the assets that are there. And it's, you know, just like problem solving, and there's some great problem solvers definitely on this call, you know, so that's really cool to see. Excellent. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we're yeah, getting close to when we're going to wrap up. Thanks again, Jodi. That was awesome. Such a great presentation. Like really, really cool what's happening in the Valley, and also like thinking of how to interact with the folks on the line here. And yeah, well, trying to how do we advance this and move this forward. So these community generation luncheons are happening every 2 weeks, and we're gonna kind of stagger them where 1 week we'll have a presentation about a project, and then the second week it's more just getting together to have an open conversation. So the next one will be in 2 weeks. I'll send out a reminder as well. If you signed up on Eventbrite, you should have the schedule and all those details that are going there. And if anyone is interested in kind of using the project or coming to the conversation with a question or a challenge or something that they're working on, that might help drive the agenda. Derek and I will put some things together and definitely bring some lunch. But if there's things that you want to talk about, and then we'll, in a month from now, in 4 weeks, we'll have another project to present. We're really looking to connect with people that are initiating projects, that are working in the space, and really it's about sharing information and building momentum on the projects. What's really exciting about this space is that we're really breaking new ground. In Jodi's presentation, mentioning looking at the regulatory aspect and the community side, the problem solving, the changes in the business model. So it is a really interesting space, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of it. But it's definitely a community kind of problem solving strategy. So that's about it for the next couple of weeks. Anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Say thank you guys for having me. It's been really great.
The ComGen lunch takes place every other Friday from noon to 1 p.m. It's a Zoom call, which is an online platform. If you have a weak internet connection, it's not a big deal. There's also a phone-in option. And like I said, it's really open to anybody who's interested in bringing community clean energy to their community. To register for the lunch, go to acca.coop/comgen, so that's COMGEN.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to catch you at the next ComGen Network lunch.
To register, go to acca.coop/com. You need to register in advance for the lunch. To register, go to acca.coop/comgen. I wrote this better. acca.coop/comgen.